Captain Jake Morrison stood at the control center of Earth Defense Station Alpha. A massive space station floated in orbit around Earth, watching for any signs of danger from deep space. Jake had been doing this job for 5 years, but he had never seen anything like what appeared on his screens today. "Sir, we're getting a message from outside the solar system," said Lieutenant Carol Davis, her voice shaking slightly. It's huge. The signal is coming from thousands of ships." Jake walked over to her station and looked at the display. The numbers made his stomach drop. Over 5,000 alien ships were approaching Earth's solar system. They were still far away, but they were coming fast. "Put the message on the main screen," Jake ordered. The screen flickered and showed a massive alien creature. It had 6 arms, gray skin, and eyes that glowed red. When it spoke, its voice was deep and cold. "People of Earth," the alien said, "I am Praetor Zexthil of the Galactic Hegemony. Your species has been found by our great empire. You have 2 choices. Submit to our rule and become part of the hegemony, or be destroyed completely. You have 30 days to decide." The message ended, leaving the control room in complete silence. Jake felt his hands shake as he reached for the emergency communication button. This was the moment that would change everything for humanity. "Get me Admiral Lisa Carter immediately," he said into his headset. "Code red emergency. We have first contact, and it's not friendly." Within minutes, Jake was talking to Admiral Carter through a secure video link. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had served in the Earth Defense Force for most of her adult life. When she heard the news, her face went pale. "How many ships did you say?" she asked. "Over 5,000, Admiral. And they're all armed. Our computers estimate each ship is at least 3 times bigger than our largest battleship." Admiral Carter closed her eyes for a moment. "Send me all the data immediately. I'm calling an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. This is beyond anything we've ever faced." The next day, leaders from every nation on Earth gathered in the council chambers in New York City. The room was full of worried faces as Admiral Carter played the alien message for everyone to see. President Amanda Wells, a woman in her early 60s with gray hair and kind eyes, stood up after the message ended. "We need to discuss our options," she said. "But first, I want to hear from our experts. What do we know about this galactic hegemony?" Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Earth's top physicist, stood up. She was a small woman with dark hair and glasses, but when she spoke, everyone listened. "Based on the signal analysis, this empire is incredibly advanced. Their ships use technology we don't understand. If they wanted to destroy us right now, they probably could. So what are our choices?" asked General Marcus Stone, the head of Earth's military forces. He was a big man with a loud voice who had never backed down from a fight. "We can surrender and hope they treat us well," said Councilman Paul Turner. He was a politician who always looked for the safe option. "Or we can fight and probably die. There might be a third option," Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. "For the past 2 years, my team has been working on something called the Barrier Protocol. It's theoretical, but if it works, we could create a shield around our entire solar system." The room erupted in surprised voices. President Wells raised her hand for silence. "Explain this barrier, Doctor." Dr. Rodriguez walked to the front of the room. "The barrier would be an energy field that blocks everything from coming in or going out. Ships, radio signals, everything. We would be completely isolated from the galaxy." "For how long?" asked Admiral Carter. "At least 50 years, maybe longer. We would be completely on our own." Councilman Turner stood up angrily. "That's insane. We would be trapped. What about trade? What about exploration? We'd be prisoners in our own solar system." "But we'd be free prisoners," said General Stone. "Better than being slaves to aliens," The debate went on for hours. Some council members wanted to surrender. Others wanted to fight, even if they had no chance of winning. A few supported Dr. Rodriguez's barrier plan. Finally, President Wells called for quiet. Dr. Rodriguez, how long would you need to build this barrier? With unlimited resources and the entire planet working together. Maybe 6 months. But I have to be honest, it might not work at all. And if we surrender? Admiral Carter answered. This time, based on what we know about empires, we would lose our independence forever. Our children would grow up as subjects of alien rulers. President Wells looked around the room at all the worried faces. She thought about her own daughter, who was just starting college. What kind of world did she want to leave for her? We need to vote, she said. All in favor of attempting Dr. Rodriguez's barrier plan? Hands slowly went up around the room. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. That evening, President Wells sat in her office, preparing for the most important speech of her life. She would be talking not just to Earth, but to the entire galaxy. The alien ships were monitoring all of Earth's communications. She walked to the camera and began to speak. People of Earth, and to the galactic hegemony watching us. Today, humanity faces a choice that will define us forever. We can bow down and accept rule by others, or we can stand up and fight for our freedom. She paused, thinking of her daughter and all the children who would inherit whatever decision she made today. The galactic hegemony has offered us a choice. Submit or die, but we reject both options. We choose a third path. We choose to be free, even if it means being alone. Earth will not kneel to anyone. A message went out across the galaxy. In the alien fleet, Peter Zexthal watched the transmission with surprise. In thousands of years of conquest, no species had ever chosen isolation over submission. Interesting, he said to his officers. These humans are either very brave or very foolish. We shall see which. On Earth, the greatest effort in human history was about to begin. The morning after President Wells' announcement, the world changed completely. Every factory, every laboratory, every construction site on Earth received new orders. Humanity was going to build the impossible. Dr. Elena Rodriguez found herself in charge of the largest science project in human history. Her small research team of 12 people suddenly became 12,000. Scientists, engineers, and workers from every country came to help build the barrier protocol. We need to work faster than we've ever worked before, she told her team during their first meeting. The alien fleet is getting closer every day. We have maybe 5 months before they arrive. Tony Martinez, the world's best construction engineer, stood up. He was a big man with strong hands who had built bridges and skyscrapers all over the world. Doctor, what exactly are we building? Elena showed them a holographic display of the solar system. We're going to place energy generators at specific points around the entire solar system. When activated, they'll create a barrier that nothing can pass through. Nothing? Asked Dr. Amy Morrison, Jake's wife and a medical researcher. What about light? What about heat from the sun? The barrier will let natural energy through, but it will stop all ships, all weapons, and all communication signals. We'll be completely cut off from the galaxy. The room fell silent as everyone realized what this meant. They were building a prison for themselves. Over the next few weeks, the work began. Tony Martinez led construction teams to the asteroid belt, where they built massive mining operations. Giant robots dug into asteroids day and night, pulling out the rare metals needed for the barrier generators. On Mars, Colonel Jennifer Scott commanded the Red Planet's transformation into a fortress. Her engineers turned the entire planet into a military base, building weapons and defenses everywhere. If the aliens get past the barrier, she told her troops, Mars will be humanity's last stand. Captain Jake Morrison was given command of a new ship, the Defiant. It was humanity's most advanced battleship, built with technology borrowed from the Barrier Project. Jake knew his ship was still no match for the alien vessels, but it was better than anything humans had built before. Our job isn't to win, he told his crew. Our job is to buy time for the barrier to be completed. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks was doing the most dangerous job of all. He led a small team of spies who snuck close to the alien fleet to gather information. Using tiny, fast ships, they watched the aliens and reported back to Earth. They're not just planning to conquer us, Ryan reported during a secret meeting. They're planning to make an example of us. They want to show the entire galaxy what happens when someone says no to the hegemony. The news was frightening, but it also brought unexpected help. Ryan discovered that other alien species in the galaxy were secretly supporting Earth. They couldn't help openly because they were afraid of the hegemony, but they sent information through hidden channels. A mysterious contact calling himself the Whisper began sending Ryan detailed plans of hegemony ships and weapons. The information was incredibly valuable, but no one knew who the Whisper really was. As the months passed, the Barrier Project grew larger and larger. Every person on Earth was involved somehow. Children collected scrap metal. Farmers grew extra food to feed the workers. Teachers created new classes to train engineers and scientists. But not everyone supported the project. Councilman Paul Turner led a group of people who thought the barrier was a terrible mistake. "We're committing suicide," he said during protests in major cities. "We'll be trapped forever, and we'll slowly die alone." The protests grew larger as people became scared. Some cities had riots. People were afraid of being cut off from the galaxy forever. President Wells faced the hardest decision of her life. "Maybe we should surrender," she said to Admiral Carter during a private meeting. "Maybe Turner is right. Maybe we're being foolish." Admiral Carter looked out the window at the construction work happening everywhere. "Amanda, I've been a soldier my whole life. I've never seen anything like what's happening now. Every person on this planet is working together for the same goal. We're not just building a barrier. We're building something that shows who we really are." Dr. Rodriguez was working 18 hours a day trying to solve the enormous technical problems. The barrier generators needed more power than anything humans had ever built. She realized they would need to tap directly into the sun's energy using a network of satellites. "It's never been done before," she told Tony Martinez. "We're basically building a ring of power collectors around the sun." "Can it work?" Tony asked. "I don't know. But if it doesn't, we're all dead anyway." The first test came in the 4th month. Dr. Rodriguez activated a small barrier generator around the moon. The energy field appeared as a shimmering dome of light around Earth's natural satellite. "It works!" she shouted as her team celebrated. But then she looked at the power readings. "We need 10 times more energy than we thought. The full barrier will require enormous amounts of power." Jake Morrison was in space when the test happened. He watched the moon disappear behind the shimmering barrier and felt both amazed and terrified. "We're really doing it," he said to his crew. "We're actually building a wall around our entire solar system." But the aliens were getting closer. Ryan Brooks reported that the hegemony fleet had grown to over 8,000 ships. They were led by War Marshal Crickstar, the most feared military commander in the galaxy. "He's never lost a battle," Ryan reported. "He's conquered over 200 planets. The other aliens are terrified of him." As the 5th month began, the barrier was only 60% complete. The alien fleet was still weeks away, but time was running out. Dr. Rodriguez pushed her teams even harder. "We need more generators," she told President Wells. "We need to build them faster." "How much faster?" the president asked. "If we don't." Finish in 3 weeks. It won't matter. The aliens will be here. All over Earth, people worked day and night. Factories never stopped. Construction crews worked in shifts around the clock. Everyone knew that humanity's survival depended on finishing the barrier in time. Dr. Amy Morrison worked with medical teams to prepare for the isolation. Once the barrier is active, we can't get any help from outside, she told her staff. We need to be ready to handle any medical emergency for the next 50 years. Tony Martinez finished the solar collection network just as the first alien scouts appeared at the edge of the solar system. The massive satellites began collecting energy from the sun and sending it to the barrier generators. Power levels are looking good, Elena Rodriguez reported. We might actually make it. But then the scanners detected something that made everyone's blood run cold. The alien fleet wasn't just coming to conquer Earth. They were bringing planet killer weapons. They're planning to destroy us completely, Jake Morrison reported from the Defiant. This isn't about conquest anymore. It's about making sure no one else ever tries to resist them. President Wells looked at the reports and made her decision. Dr. Rodriguez, how long until the barrier is ready? 2 weeks, maybe less if we push. Everything to the limit. Then we push everything to the limit. All of humanity depends on it. The race against time had begun. The hegemony fleet arrived like a dark cloud blocking out the stars. War Marshal Krickstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Annihilator, and looked at the small blue planet ahead of him. He had conquered hundreds of worlds, but none had ever dared to resist like these humans. How many ships do we have? He asked his second-in-command. 8,732 ships, Marshal, plus the world-ender weapon. Krickstar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. The world-ender was a massive weapon that could crack planets in half. He had used it only 3 times before, and each time it had ended all resistance in that sector of the galaxy. These humans will learn what happens when someone defies the hegemony, he said. Begin the attack. On Earth, Captain Jake Morrison watched the alien fleet approach through the sensors of his ship, the Defiant. The number of enemy ships was overwhelming, but Jake had learned something important during the past months. Humans were good at fighting impossible battles. All ships, this is Captain Morrison, he said into his communicator. We're not trying to win this battle. We're trying to buy time. Every minute we keep them busy is another minute for the barrier to be completed. The Earth Defense Fleet was much smaller than the alien armada, but they had advantages the aliens didn't expect. Human ships were faster and more maneuverable. More importantly, humans had learned to think in ways that confused their enemies. The first battle began near Jupiter. Jake led his squadron in a surprise attack on the alien scouts. Instead of fighting like traditional space battles, the humans used guerrilla tactics. They hit fast, did damage, and ran away before the aliens could respond. They're not fighting like any species we've encountered, reported one of Krickstar's officers. They're using the asteroids and moons as cover. They're not trying to hold territory. Clever, Krickstar admitted, but cleverness won't save them from superior numbers. On Mars, Colonel Jennifer Scott prepared for the defense of the Red Planet. She had turned Mars into a fortress, with weapons hidden in every crater and canyon. When the alien ships approached, they found themselves facing an entire planet that had become a weapon. Welcome to Mars, Jennifer said, as her hidden cannons opened fire. Hope you like the weather. The aliens expected to easily take Mars, but the humans had learned to use the planet's harsh environment against them. Dust storms hid human positions. The thin atmosphere made alien sensors less effective. Every rock and hill had been turned into a defensive position. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked frantically in her laboratory as the battles raged around the solar system. The barrier was almost complete, but she needed more time to make the final connections. How much longer? asked Tony Martinez, who was helping coordinate the final construction. 6 hours, maybe less, Elena replied. But we need to keep the aliens away from the barrier generators. That was easier said than done. The aliens had discovered the barrier project and were sending ships to destroy the generators. Jake Morrison and his fleet were racing from one generator to the next, trying to protect them. Generator 7 is under attack, reported Lieutenant Carol Davis from the defense station. 3 alien ships are trying to destroy it. Jake pushed his ship to maximum speed. The Defiant was fast, but the alien ships were already firing on the generator. He arrived just as the structure began to take damage. All weapons fire, Jake ordered. The Defiant's guns opened up on the alien ships, surprising them. The human ship was much smaller, but it was also much faster. The alien ships turned to fight Jake's ship, giving the generator time to repair itself. This was the pattern that repeated throughout the solar system. Human ships would attack, draw the aliens away from important targets, and then escape. But War Marshal Crickstar was getting impatient. "Bring up the World Ender," he ordered. "We'll destroy their planet and end this resistance." The World Ender was a massive weapon, bigger than most space stations. It moved slowly toward Earth, protected by hundreds of smaller ships. When it fired, it would crack the planet like an egg. Dr. Rodriguez detected the weapon approaching and felt her heart sink. "It's a planet killer," she reported to President Wells. "If it fires, nothing will survive. How long until the barrier is ready?" The president asked. 3 hours. "How long until that weapon is in range?" 1 hour. President Wells closed her eyes. After all their work, after all their sacrifice, they were going to be 3 hours too late. But Jake Morrison had other ideas. He gathered every human ship he could find and prepared for the most desperate attack in human history. "We're going to ram that weapon," he announced to his fleet. "We're going to fly right into it and destroy it from the inside." "Sir, that's suicide," said his second-in-command. "Maybe, but if we don't try, Earth dies anyway." The human fleet, led by the Defiant, flew straight at the World Ender. The alien escorts tried to stop them, but Jake's ships were too fast and too determined. Several human ships were destroyed, but the others kept going. Jake's ship was the first to reach the massive weapon. He flew the Defiant right into the World Ender's main gun and detonated his ship's power core. The explosion damaged the weapon's firing mechanism. But Jake Morrison was gone. Dr. Amy Morrison, Jake's wife, was in the medical center when she heard the news. She cried for her husband, but she also knew his sacrifice had given them the time they needed. "The barrier is at 90%, Helena Rodriguez reported. "We need 30 more minutes." But the aliens were furious about the loss of their superweapon. Crickstar ordered all ships to attack Earth directly. If they couldn't crack the planet, they would burn everything on its surface. The alien fleet moved toward Earth like a swarm of angry insects. They began bombing cities and military bases, trying to stop the barrier project through pure destruction. "They're targeting the control centers," reported General Stone. "If they destroy the barrier controls, we won't be able to activate it." Colonel Scott launched every ship Mars had to protect Earth. Human fighters and bombers flew suicide missions to keep the aliens away from the barrier controls. The sky above Earth filled with explosions and burning ships. In her underground laboratory, Dr. Rodriguez watched the power levels climb toward 100%. "Come on," she whispered. "Just a little more time." Above her, the battle for Earth reached its peak. Human and alien ships fought in the atmosphere, crashing into cities and oceans. The barrier generators were taking damage, but they were still working. 95%, Helena reported. War Marshal Crickstar realized what was happening. "They're building some kind of shield. All ships, target those energy generators. The aliens threw everything they had at the barrier generators. Human pilots died by the hundreds trying to protect the installations. But slowly, inevitably, the barrier continued to grow stronger. 98%, Elena said. 99%. 100%. Dr. Rodriguez looked at President Wells, who was standing beside her in the control room. "It's ready," she said. "But once I activate it, we're cut off from the galaxy forever." President Wells thought about her daughter, about Jake Morrison's sacrifice, about all the people who had died to make this moment possible. "Do it," she said. Elena Rodriguez pressed the activation button. Across the solar system, hundreds of barrier generators came online simultaneously. A shimmering dome of energy began to form around the entire solar system. The aliens found themselves trapped inside with the humans. Their advanced technology began to fail as the barrier's energy interfered with their systems. War Marshal Crickstar watched in horror as his mighty fleet was suddenly cut off from the hegemony. "What have you done?" He screamed at the humans. President Wells answered him through the communication system. "We've chosen freedom over slavery. You came here to conquer us. Now you can stay here forever." The barrier was complete. Earth had shut its doors to the galaxy. The barrier held. For the first time in months, there was silence in the solar system. No more alien ships were coming. No more weapons were firing. Earth was alone, surrounded by a shimmering wall of energy that stretched across the entire solar system. But victory had come at a terrible price. Thousands of human ships were destroyed. Millions of people had died in the fighting. Entire cities lay in ruins. And now, trapped inside the barrier with the humans, were over 2,000 alien ships and their crews. War Marshal Crickstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Annihilator, and stared at the energy readings. His technicians had been working for days, trying to understand what the humans had built. "Can we break through the barrier?" he asked his chief scientist. "No, Marshal. The energy field is unlike anything we've seen. It's not just blocking physical objects. It's disrupting all of our advanced technology. Our weapons are working at half power. Our shields are failing. Even our life support systems are struggling." Crickstar felt something he had never experienced before: fear. He had conquered hundreds of worlds, but now he was trapped on the wrong side of an impossible wall. On Earth, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was dealing with her own problems. The barrier was working perfectly, but it was using enormous amounts of power. The solar collection satellites were running at maximum capacity, and she wasn't sure how long they could maintain the energy field. "We need to reduce power consumption," she told her team. "The barrier is stable, but we can't keep it at full strength forever." President Wells called an emergency meeting of the surviving government leaders. The war had killed many officials, and the planet was in chaos. Cities needed to be rebuilt. Millions of refugees needed homes. And somehow, they had to figure out what to do with the alien fleet trapped inside their solar system. "What are our options?" the president asked Admiral Carter. "We could try to destroy the alien ships," suggested General Stone. "They're weakened by the barrier. We might be able to win a direct fight now." "That would mean more death," said Dr. Amy Morrison, who had taken charge of the medical relief efforts after her husband's death. "We've already lost so much. Do we really want to keep fighting?" The debate continued for hours. Some leaders wanted to attack the aliens while they were weak. Others wanted to try to negotiate. A few suggested simply ignoring the alien fleet and letting them figure out their own problems. Meanwhile, War Marshal Crickstar was facing a crisis of his own. His fleet was trapped, their technology was failing, and worst of all, they were cut off from the hegemony. Without regular supply ships, they would eventually run out of food and fuel. "We need to contact the humans," said his second-in-command. "We need to arrange some kind of ... arrangement." The words stuck in Crickstar's throat. He had never negotiated with anyone. He had always been the conqueror, never the conquered. But now he was trapped, and the humans held all the power. The first contact between the two sides happened when a small human ship approached the Annihilator. Admiral Carter herself was on the ship, along with a team of diplomats. "War Marshal Crickstar," she said when they established communication. "We need to talk." The meeting took place on a neutral space station that had been built hastily for the occasion. Crickstar, who was 8 feet tall and covered in armor, looked down at the much smaller human woman. "You have made a terrible mistake," he said. "The hegemony will not forget this. They will find a way to break your barrier, and when they do, you will pay for your defiance." Admiral Carter sat down calmly. "Maybe, but that could take decades or centuries. In the meantime, you're stuck here with us. Your ships are failing. Your people are hungry. You can choose to be enemies forever, or you can choose to survive." The negotiations were difficult. Crickstar wanted to maintain his authority over his fleet. The humans wanted guarantees that the aliens wouldn't attack again. Both sides were angry, scared, and proud, but slowly, practical concerns began to override emotions. The alien ships needed food and fuel. The humans needed to repair their damaged cities. Neither side could afford to keep fighting. A strange agreement was reached. The aliens would be allowed to establish a base on one of Jupiter's moons. They would have limited freedom to move around the solar system, but they would be monitored constantly. In exchange, they would share their advanced technology. To help repair the damage from the war, not everyone was happy with the arrangement. Many humans wanted revenge for the destruction of their cities. Many aliens saw cooperation with humans as shameful surrender, but the agreement held because it had to. Over the following months, something unexpected began to happen. Humans and aliens started working together on practical problems. Dr. Rodriguez worked with alien scientists to improve the barrier technology. She learned that the aliens knew things about energy manipulation that humans had never discovered. In return, she showed them human approaches to problem solving that amazed them. "Your species thinks in ways we never considered," said Dr. Vex Ron, an alien physicist. "You see solutions where we see only problems." Tony Martinez worked with alien engineers to rebuild the damaged cities. The aliens had construction techniques that could repair buildings in days instead of months. The humans had creativity and flexibility that impressed their alien partners. "We always build the same way," explained Engineer Zorthik. "But humans build differently each time. You adapt to any situation." Even the military cooperation was surprising. Colonel Jennifer Scott worked with alien tactical experts to improve Mars defenses. She learned that the aliens had strategies humans had never thought of. They learned that human unpredictability was a powerful weapon, but the most important. Cooperation was happening in the medical centers. Dr. Amy Morrison worked with alien doctors to treat the wounded from both sides. She discovered that despite their different appearances, humans and aliens had similar needs for healing and comfort. "Pain is the same for everyone," she told her mixed team of human and alien medics. "So is hope." War Marshal Crickstar watched these developments with growing confusion. He had been taught that the hegemony was superior to all other species. But these humans kept surprising him. They were not the primitive savages he had expected. One day, he visited the medical center, where Dr. Morrison was treating wounded soldiers from both sides. He saw human doctors working to save alien lives, and alien medics helping human patients. "Why do you help our wounded?" he asked Dr. Morrison. She looked up at the towering alien commander. "Because they're hurt, and we can help them. It's that simple." Crickstar had never heard anything like this. In the hegemony, conquered species were slaves. Enemies were destroyed. There was no concept of helping those who had been trying to kill U. As the months passed, the solar system began to change. The barrier remained strong, keeping the outside galaxy away. But inside the barrier, something new was growing. Humans and aliens were learning to live together, not as conquerors and conquered, but as neighbors. The changes were not easy. There were fights, misunderstandings, and moments when the fragile peace almost broke. But both sides had learned something important. They were stuck together, and their survival depended on cooperation. Dr. Rodriguez made a discovery that changed everything. While studying the barrier technology with her alien colleagues, she found a way to create small, temporary openings in the energy field. They wouldn't be big enough for ships to pass through, but they would allow communication signals to reach the outside galaxy. We could send messages, she told President Wells. We could find out what's happening in the galaxy. The president approved the experiment. A small communication beam was sent through a temporary opening in the barrier. What came back shocked everyone. The galaxy was in chaos. A hegemony was falling apart. Dozens of species had declared independence, inspired by Earth's example. The human doctrine, the idea that freedom was worth any sacrifice, was spreading throughout the stars. "We did it," whispered Admiral Carter as she read the reports. "We actually did it. We showed the galaxy that the hegemony could be resisted." But the victory was bittersweet. Earth was free, but cut off from the galaxy it had inspired. The barrier that had saved them was also their prison. As the first year of isolation ended, the humans and aliens trapped together in the solar system faced a new challenge: learning to build a future together, alone among the stars. 50 years had passed since the Great Barrier was built. Earth looked very different now. The destroyed cities had been rebuilt, bigger and more beautiful than before. Gardens and parks covered areas that had once been battlefields. Most amazing of all, humans and aliens walked together through the streets, working side by side as friends. Dr. Alina Rodriguez was now an old woman with white hair and wrinkled hands. She still worked in her laboratory every day, but now she had help from both human and alien scientists. Her greatest student was Dr. Kevin Taylor, a young man who had been born after the barrier was built. "Professor Rodriguez," Kevin said as he entered her laboratory, "I think I've found a way to modify the barrier." Elena looked up from her work. For 50 years, she had been trying to find a way to safely open the barrier. The energy field that protected Earth also kept them isolated from the galaxy. They had been able to send small communication signals through temporary openings, but nothing larger. "Show me," she said. Kevin activated a holographic display that showed the barriers. Energy patterns. "I've been working with Dr. Vexron and the alien engineering team. We think we can create controlled openings that are big enough for small ships to pass through." Elena studied the display carefully. The math looked correct, but she had learned to be cautious. How big would these openings be? Big enough for a single ship, maybe two, and they would only last for a few minutes at a time. Elena felt excitement growing in her chest. After 50 years of isolation, they might finally be able to send ships to the galaxy again. The news spread quickly through the solar system. Admiral Ryan Brooks, who had once been the young spy watching alien fleets, was now the head of Earth's diplomatic service. He had been preparing for this moment for decades. "We need to find out what's happening in the galaxy," he told President Susan Wells, who had taken over from her mother, Amanda, 20 years earlier. "Our last communication signals showed that the hegemony was collapsing, but that was 10 years ago." President Wells nodded. She had grown up hearing stories about the Great War and the barrier. Now, as leader of the isolated solar system, she faced a decision as difficult as the one her mother had made. If we open the barrier, even for a few minutes, we risk exposure. Other species might try to attack us, or the hegemony might have rebuilt its strength. The debate was familiar. Some people wanted to keep the barrier closed forever. They had built a good life inside the solar system, and they didn't want to risk it. Others wanted to reconnect with the galaxy and share what they had learned. War Marshal Crickstar was now an old alien, but he still commanded respect from both his own people and the humans. Over the years, he had changed from Earth's enemy to one of its strongest defenders. If you open the barrier, he told the council, you must be prepared for anything. The galaxy you knew 50 years ago no longer exists. The decision was made to send a small exploration mission through a temporary opening. Admiral Brooks would lead the mission personally, along with a mixed crew of humans and aliens who had volunteered for the dangerous journey. The day of the first opening arrived. Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Taylor worked together to create a small gap in the barrier, just big enough for one ship to pass through. The ship was called the Explorer, and it carried the hopes and fears of everyone in the solar system. Opening the barrier now, Dr. Taylor announced. The energy field flickered, and a small hole appeared, no bigger than a city block. Beyond it, the stars looked the same as they always had, but everyone knew that the galaxy out there was completely different. Admiral Brooks piloted the Explorer through the opening. With him were Captain Lisa Chun, a human pilot, and Commander Zorval, an alien who had been born in the solar system after the barrier was built. None of them had ever seen the outside galaxy. "We're through," Brooks reported as the ship passed beyond the barrier, beginning long-range scans. What they found amazed them. The galaxy was full of activity, but it wasn't the hegemony they remembered. Hundreds of new space stations floated between the stars. Ships from dozens of different species traveled freely without fear. Most surprising of all, many of these ships had human-style designs. "Admiral," said Captain Chun, "I'm picking up a communication signal. It's directed at us." "Put it through," Brooks ordered. The main screen showed an alien face, but this alien was smiling. Behind him, Brooks could see humans working alongside creatures from many different species. "Welcome, ship from the barrier system," the alien said. "We have been waiting for you for a very long time. I am Ambassador Pelter of the Free Galactic Alliance. On behalf of the 1,700 member species, we offer you greetings and friendship." Brooks felt his heart pounding. 1,700 species? What happened to the hegemony? Ambassador Pelter's smile grew wider. The hegemony fell 30 years ago. Your example showed the galaxy that tyrants could be resisted. The last emperor surrendered when 500 species declared independence on the same day. They called it Earth Day, in your honor. The Explorer spent 3 days outside the barrier, gathering information. What they learned was incredible. Earth's resistance had inspired the greatest revolution in galactic history. The concept of freedom had spread from species to species, until the entire galaxy was transformed. But the most amazing discovery was what had happened to the human colonies that had been outside the barrier when it was built. Instead of being destroyed, they had become the leaders of the galactic revolution. A human doctrine of freedom and cooperation was now taught in schools across the galaxy. "There are billions of humans out here," reported Commander Zorval. "They've been waiting for Earth to return. They've built monuments to the heroes of the Barrier War. Captain Morrison, Dr. Rodriguez, President Wells, they're legends." When the Explorer returned through the barrier, all of the solar system celebrated. The news that Earth had inspired galactic freedom spread to every planet and space station. But with the good news came a difficult decision. The galaxy was free and wanted Earth to join the new alliance. But many people in the solar system were afraid. They had built a good life during their isolation, and they worried about losing it. The debate lasted for months. Some wanted to lower the barrier completely and rejoin the galaxy as leaders. Others wanted to keep it closed and maintain their independence. A few suggested a middle path. Dr. Rodriguez, now very old but still sharp, proposed a solution that surprised everyone. "We don't have to choose all or nothing," she said. "We can modify the barrier to allow controlled contact. We can let people and ships come and go, but we keep the ability to close the doors if we need to." The idea was brilliant. Earth could rejoin the galaxy, but they would keep their ultimate protection. If tyrants ever rose again, if the galaxy became dangerous, they could retreat behind their barrier and wait for better times. President Wells made the announcement that changed everything. "Earth chooses to rejoin the galaxy, but on our own terms. We will lower the barrier partially. We will welcome visitors and send ambassadors. But we will never give up our ability to protect ourselves." The partial opening of the barrier was a celebration that lasted for weeks. Ships from hundreds of species came to visit the legendary Earth. They came to see the planet that had taught the galaxy about freedom. War Marshal Crickstar, now very old, stood with Dr. Rodriguez on the observation deck of the space station where they had first met as enemies. They watched as ships from across the galaxy arrived to welcome Earth back. "Did you ever think it would end this way?" Crickstar asked. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. "I hoped it would. When we built the barrier, we weren't just protecting ourselves. We were making a statement about what we believed in." "And what was that?" "That freedom is worth any price. That people should choose their own path. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from a fight you can't win." Young humans and aliens who had grown up together in the isolated solar system now prepared to explore the galaxy their parents had inspired. They carried with them the lessons learned during 50 years of cooperation. Admiral Brooks was chosen as Earth's first ambassador to the Free Galactic Alliance. As his ship prepared to leave for the galactic capital, he thought about all the people who had sacrificed to make this moment possible. Dr. Amy Morrison, now an old woman, came to see him off. She still missed her husband Jake, who had died protecting the barrier generators 50 years earlier. Jake would be proud, she told Brooks. He died believing that Earth would choose freedom. Look what that choice led to. As Brooks' ship departed through the modified barrier, the people of Earth watched from their homes and space stations. They had learned that freedom required constant vigilance, but it was worth protecting. The barrier still surrounded the solar system, but now it was a choice rather than a prison. Earth had opened its doors to the galaxy, but it had kept the keys. The galaxy was free because Earth had shown that resistance was possible. And Earth was free because its people had been willing to pay any price to remain so. In schools across the galaxy, children of many species learned about the day when one small planet said no to an empire and changed everything. They learned that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from conquest, but from the courage to stand alone. Earth had shut its doors to save itself. When it opened,